Hello and welcome to another episode of the Principal Liner Notes podcast. This is Sean Gaylord, and I'm so excited to have another connected conversation. And I'm very pleased to welcome to the podcast Ryan Ross, who is the CEO of Olivia Technologies. He is based in Palo Alto, California. That's my birth state. We've also found some other connections and kinship, and I'm really excited, Ryan, to have you on the podcast, my friend.
Sean, equally, I tell you, it's very, very exciting to be here and sharing this conversation with you. I'm really excited to get into it.
Well, we already did get into it actually.
We did
right before, and that's always a good sign of things to come in the conversation. So let's hit the ground running and kind of what led to your journey. I'm always curious about the origin story of
yeah.
and what led you to this journey as CEO in Olivia Technologies. And there may be some folks who are tuning in who go, yeah, I know that guy. Or there may be some folks who may not be familiar with you. So I would love to hear your origin story.
Yeah. So, one of the, if you'd asked me about 2 years ago whether I would be focused in the education industry, sorry, there's a phone call. I don't know why.
Oh, that's okay. Hey, it's homemade. I'm here at the kitchen table. We've had kids. No, I get it, pal.
Sorry, man.
It's all right.
Turn this off for a moment so that we don't.
You're fine, man.
Sorry. So let me start over. So, if you'd asked me 2 years ago whether I'd be involved in focused in the education market, I would say, what?
Yeah.
All right. So my background, I worked at Visa for many years in the innovation group and worked with lots of different industries, supermarket industries, insurance companies, federal government, all these things. And so as part of that, I got exposed to both lots of different industries as well as lots of different types of technologies. And so as I moved out of Visa, I worked in Silicon Valley, worked for a handful of startups, and ultimately saw an opportunity to start Olivia and be able to address an issue that I wasn't even aware of. And I think COVID came along, and at that point, what was really interesting is that I got a phone call from a friend of mine and she said, "Hey, look, I keep getting all these." She's a consultant. She keep getting all these phone calls from school districts, teachers, administrators, and they're really struggling with connectivity for students as they're trying to figure out a way to deploy technology to solve the issue that students weren't showing up to school because of COVID. Mm-hmm. And so as I sat down and looked at that issue, one of the things that I realized very quickly was how big the problem was, right? In the US, there's about 15 million students that don't have access to viable broadband, right? And so as I started digging in and looking at, what does that look like state by state, those type of things, it was mind blowing. I mean, you think California, technology, all these great things, 1.5 million students in California don't have access to viable broadband. And so, in the heart of Silicon Valley, then when I started looking even further, literally 40 miles away from here on the coast in Half Moon Bay and Pescadero, 4,000 students don't have access to the internet. And, as we started really trying to dig in why, right? It really is several issues. One, it's the complexity of trying to deploy broadband in environments that are hilly, that are way out in the middle of nowhere, et cetera, and the cost of doing so. So the ISPs really don't have any incentives to go run cable and fiber out to these small little towns where they're not going to make any money. So it just it created its own self boundaries, in terms of where it was going. But we realized it's not about broadband, right? And so quit sitting here talking about broadband if it's never going to show up. It's really about looking at how you get these digital assets into the students' hands and that they are able to engage with those digital resources, just like a student can do with internet. And so once we understood that premise, we said, well, then let's go about thinking ways to deliver that in a unique and different way. And so it's really just taking the mindset and saying, what's the problem? And let's not go down the same path everybody else is going, but let's figure out a way to look at this and see if this can be solved with technology. And so we found out very quickly that the way to solve this problem was to use what is called edge computing technology. It exists already. Manufacturers use this for high computational software and computing in factories. And so we said, well, we could do that at home. And so we literally took that technology, what was really designed for industry, and then turned it around and looked at how we could shape it for a consumer-facing engagement tool. In this case, how students can engage with it. So the way this works is that our device called Olivia is a combination of two things. Really, it's a combination of storage, so we can store all the content that the teacher's creating through the existing learning management system, as well as being able to store a library of videos, podcasts, and ebooks surrounding the subject matter that student's learning about. We store that on the device. And then the other component is that this device has a Wi-Fi access point on it. So when we talk about Wi-Fi, people think, well, Wi-Fi is internet. No, it's not. It's really the means for your device to connect to that device and then go out somewhere else. In this case, your laptop, your tablet, your phone connects to our device because it's Wi-Fi. But what we're doing is directing you to the content that's stored on that device that's been curated by your teacher, by the school, and also looking at how we create an environment where really builds engagement for those students. And this can be deployed anywhere. And so you don't need internet. You literally need power. You take it home, plug it in, take your laptop, log onto it, and then there you go. You can do your homework, and then you can also engage with lots of other content that's designed for those students.
Ryan, I really appreciate the mindset or the approach. You mentioned in your origin story the word innovation and how you kind of swam in those waters in Silicon Valley, and basically a big part of, or at least I think of from a principal and educator standpoint, because innovation is a buzzword, is that innovation is something as simple as identifying a problem.
Yep.
And then looking at a solution or looking for a solution in a different, maybe untested way.
Right.
And when we talk about digital divide and we talk about that, I mean, the numbers that you shared are staggering.
Yeah, it is really
Not getting that access. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you go state by state, right? So just to give you an example, Texas has 1.8 million students that can't connect. New Mexico has 40% of their students that don't have access to broadband. So look, the problems are very, very big and real, right? And so what happens is that if you're a school district, let's say, a school district in a rural area, it becomes extremely challenging for you to take what the teachers are already adopting, right, and using inside the classroom. So as you know this, Sean, that the resources that teachers are engaging with now are moving quickly into digital resources. Yeah. And they're using those resources inside the classroom. But if you've got a population of students that don't have access to the internet, the minute those students leave the school, they don't have access to those resources. And so it really creates this have and have not world, and it's growing exponentially because the adoption of digital resources inside of schools is exploding. And part of that was because of COVID, right? Mm-hmm. But the other thing, when you talk about innovation, which is interesting, is that my experience is that people love to talk about innovation, right? But there are a certain group of individuals that are willing to take a risk essentially and look at doing something new, right? And so doing something new means that you have to think and involve and invest your time. But the objective is to see that you're solving a problem and then you come out on the other end better off than you were before. And so
Yeah.
this is where we focus in on trying to figure out what schools have already shown that they're innovative, and working with them to help establish the foundation for how this would work in the industry. Because I've seen this in an example of the supermarket industry where we implemented a technology, a lot of naysayers, as you've
Right.
talked about, right?
Yeah.
And so, get through the naysayers, get to those that get the real value of this, willing to go do it. And then on the other side, realizing that you find out that what you were implementing has a lot more value than you originally intended, right? And that's when once that fuse is lit, then it's really a way for these schools to show other schools, as you know, that this is safe, it works, it's got value, the teachers like it, the students are engaged. And then at that point, it really starts moving exponentially as something that's a fundamental opportunity for these schools.
And as a unabashed, proud Title I principal, what drives me is making sure that, as I said before we press record on the podcast, our kids get to do the cool stuff and
Right.
and have access, to these things. I mean, man, AI is is here. It's
Yeah.
not going
Yeah.
anywhere. Has been here.
Yeah.
So for that principal, who may be dealing with the naysayers and dealing with the mindset that kids that belong to a certain zip code or live in a certain part of the world or have a certain part of the socioeconomic economic status that isn't high. What is that pathway or entry point from Olivia Technologies to that principal that is looking and fighting against those naysayers?
Yeah. So, yeah, first and foremost, you got to know that it works. And so we've gone out and deployed it in schools. We know it works. And, there's some fundamentals here, right? First and foremost, we've got to make it as simple and as easy for students to log on and engage with the content. And so that's number one rule. And
Mhm.
so we've done that. And we realize if all we did is deliver homework, then that's not, okay, I'm forced to do that. But what we really want to do is create an experience for these students and giving them access to resources that this is a really interesting story where we deployed a school in rural Texas.
Mhm.
The kids were incredibly excited about what we were deploying. And I was thinking, why are they so excited about being able to do homework now at home? Right.
Yeah.
But it wasn't about the homework. It was about the ability to have access to technology. So they felt like any other kid that was, living in a city or wherever that had broadband. So now they can play in technology, right? The
Mhm.
second piece was that we gave them more than just homework. We gave them videos around the subject matters that they could watch, and being able to give them those resources of videos, podcasts. That's amazing. They love podcasts, listening to podcasts and
Nice.
ebooks. But what was really fascinating is that as we're doing our training, one of the kids raised her hand one day and said, "Hey, I can help you guys." And we said, "Well, how can you help us?" And he said, "I've already talked to all the other students, and this is what we want to see from videos, podcasts, and ebooks on the Olivia platform." And so the minute we heard that, we realized how hungry they were to
Mm.
engage with this, but also sort of make it their own in some ways. And so we knew we were on something at that level. And then for the teachers, and as you know, Sean, look, if we showed up to the table and this is something that is hard to understand, I don't,
Mm.
like you said, there are teachers that just really aren't digitally proficient, and that's not to say that's a bad thing. It's just where they are, right? And so we realized we had to make it very, very simple for teachers, but also bringing the value in for the teachers. And so one of the things we realized very quickly is the struggle that teachers have in finding resources that apply to the curriculum that they're trying to deploy. So we realized very quickly, if we created a library for that teacher, because we know you're a sixth grade math teacher, we know what your curriculum is, let's get videos surrounding that you can easily implement as part of your curriculum or part of the library, or podcast, or ebooks, and so bringing that to the table, what we found is teachers immediately love that, because now they don't have to spend 20 minutes looking for a video, right? We already have it for you. We already know what you're doing. We already know your curriculum. So making sure that the value is there for the teachers in both saving time, as well as looking at how we extend the resources that they would never have access to. And as you know, we discussed, Sean, is that a lot of these schools in rural areas, they don't have budgets that can go out and buy any type of resources, right, that they want. It's almost down to the teacher trying to find the resources, then figure out whether there's budget for it, and then see, then can I include it in that process? And so what we want to do is take the teachers out of that equation and already have that for them, but also making sure that the principals in the districts also play a role in that, because we both meet the standards, right? And also we're giving the tool sets that the teachers themselves don't have time to go after, and then add other value to that related to other curriculum that the teachers would like to have, or the schools would like to have those kids engage with it at that level. So that's kind of how we view that.
Now that's really sensational, Ryan, because I like how the anecdote about the student, so you are dignifying and promoting student voice,
Yeah.
and really listening to the people whom we ultimately serve, and then also also dignifying the gig of teachers. Teachers have a lot on their plate. A quick Google may lead them down a wrong resource, or may lead them down a pretty intensive rabbit hole. But it sounds like here with the platform from Olivia, you're able to kind of curate some things that have been approved, refereed,
Yep.
aligned with curriculum and standards, and
Yep.
then the teacher can kind of pick and choose and to tailor that learning experience. And I love how you use the word experience, to make learning meaningful for students who may not normally have that meaningful learning experience, based upon the school, or based upon the community, or what have you.
Yeah. Well, just to expand on that, Sean, look, the way we look at Olivia is really your education network, right? It can be deployed both for the students that don't have access, and it can be deployed for the students that do have access. Why is that a benefit? Because one of the things that we bring to the table is that once the student logs on to Olivia, they don't have access to the internet. They only have access to the curriculum that you want them to engage with. And so why is that interesting? Well, we cut the noise down from the minute you go off to YouTube and then all of a sudden you're distracted and you're going to go find something else. We literally are delivering what the teachers are trying to get you engaged with. Focus, no distractions, because you can't access anything else while you're in that moment. And then secondly is, creating in a safe environment for these kids. And we hear this from parents, especially middle school. I'll tell you, the middle school parents are frightened, as they should be. But, their kids now are just getting into that mode of, social media, all these things. And so creating an environment. And again, as I would echo, this is for the school. This is a school education network that can be deployed for all students, creating a safe environment and designed for what you want to deliver. And one of the things that I struggled with is, how did the schools get into the business of broadband, right? And trying to work with providers and all these things. And it is just a waste of time when, if you take a technology that can be delivered, designed specifically for what you're trying to do as a teacher, as an administrator, as a district, and delivering those resources to the students, then you take out a lot of that noise, and that can be deployed today, literally. And so, we're focused in on how we shape this for the industry, right? As we talked before, it's hard to understand what the teachers are, where the resources are coming from, where that goes. With our platform, we have the ability for both teachers and administrators to see, where the students are spending their time. What are they engaging with? Other ways to position content to help maybe personalize that experience for those students in this environment. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're in the middle of nowhere or you're in inner city school. this education network works anywhere and for anyone in those environments.
You know, in doing my homework on you and researching a little bit about Olivia, I know that you've had some success and a pretty solid foothold. You mentioned rural Texas.
Yep.
I know Hawaii as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
For you, what was a moment where you as CEO of Olivia Technologies, and maybe it was a school or district or what have you, where you saw like the vision's happening, it's coming together. I would
Yeah.
love to hear an anecdote about.
Yeah. Well, I'll share again, one of the schools that we deployed in East Texas, Joaquin ISD, sixth grade, there's 40 students. I think it was 3 different classes. And so as we got in there, our trainer, Chris, was in there, providing both the training for the teachers and for the students. And as he got into the students, we jumped on a Zoom call just to listen in and see the reaction. And again, as I mentioned, I was really dumbfounded about how excited the students were. And as I mentioned before, we realized these students want to participate in a world of technology, right? They asked us, does this run AI? What else can we do with this, right?
Yeah.
But what was really fascinating, again, is where they started seeing opportunities to bring in some of the things that they wanted to engage with. So one of the students asked us, because they realized our trainer, Chris, was going to Hawaii. This sixth grade class was learning about volcanoes. And they said, hey, you're going to Hawaii on the Big Island. Can you send some photos back from the volcano?
Mm-hmm.
So Chris goes out to Hawaii and was talking to the students in Hawaii. And they said, well, can you create a video about what it's like to live on the Big Island next to a volcano? Right. And being able to have those students create that content and then deliver it back to this classroom in Joaquin. And so we realized very quickly, as we were able to provide that flexibility in the way the content be curated, the way the students can participate in it, the more we see the students seeing it as their network or their engagement, the more we're going to see those students participating in that, and then as well as the teachers. And so we've left this open so that the teachers can sort of add their flavor to it, and making sure that these kids are as engaged as possible around what they're teaching.
That's pretty amazing. That's really inspiring. Actually, what a great story. CEO, leadership, culture, collaboration, innovation. Those are all those things that are probably in your this kind of stew that you brew as leader. What are those things that kind of drive and inspire you to do the innovative things
Yeah.
that Olivia is doing?
Well, I'll have to say, Sean, I've done a lot of innovation before in lots of different industries. But I have never found myself in a position where we're more mission driven, right? In looking at how we solve a real problem that has, potentially incredible outcomes for students. And we started seeing that already. And so, not only myself, but the team is hearing that, right? And is getting, I'm telling you, they're extremely excited about, what we're doing, what we've seen so far, and where we think we can take this. So, we're starting to get involved in areas like the Indian nations, right?
Nice.
An area where there is no infrastructure. And to be able to bring a technology, and really, we don't like to say technology, it's really about being able to bring resources to these students and having them engage digitally the way other students do. It lights you up. It really does. And hearing how, both the administration, the teachers, and the students, really want to participate in this in some ways. And so, having seen this, it's just incredibly exciting to me and the team and where we are. We know we're solving problems. There's lots of them, as you know, and being able to see how we can play a role in that. I mean, just, we're focusing on the K-12, but we've already been asked, for example, rural community colleges. guess what? They suffer. Just because you graduate high school doesn't mean immediately you've got broadband when you go to community college. And so looking at how we bridge the community college with the local high school and getting more advanced courses in front of those students, that wasn't on our radar scope, but that's being brought to our attention. Workforce development programming, right? A lot of these students in rural areas aren't going to college. And so how do you connect them with workforce development opportunities and where they, the options that they have as they're looking to exit high school? And again, these are all things that we were presented by teachers and administrators asking us, hey, could you do this? Could you do that? So that's where this gets very exciting, is that we originally looked at, okay, broadband, how we fix that. But we realized very quickly it's not about broadband, it's about engagement and getting the right resources in front of those students that they can benefit from, and really making life easier for teachers in terms of how they engage digitally with these students as well.
With the ever-changing, rapid world of technology.
Yes.
And I was kind of toying with this question. Man, 5 years from now, where do we see Olivia Technologies, or something like that? And I know that there's probably in that 5-year period
Yes.
1,000 different answers to that question. That
Absolutely.
if you say one,
yeah,
it's already you're going to go past it. So where maybe 6 months from now or 3 months from now, I guess, where do you envision Olivia Technologies? What's your dream and 3 to 6 months from now? And
I think it's a great question, Sean, and you're spot on. I could not predict what 5 years looks like down the road as technology moves, but I know one thing, that digital engagement is not going to go away, right? And how you deliver that in a more safer environment, one that's curated for those students, is where the industry is going. And so we think we're going to play a major role in that as we move forward, just because of our view of how we can deploy an education network that can work both at home as well as inside the classroom, right? We've been asked to do that as well. So, it's interesting where I think the bottom line here is, how do you take a very rapidly changing industry? Teachers aren't technologists, they're teachers, right? Administrators are not technologists. So you want to take the technology out of the equation and deliver the results or the engagement that they're looking for, right? And make it as simple as possible for those schools to implement. So where we are as a company in 5 months from now or a year from now, we're looking at working with those school districts that want to innovate, that a known problem, and believe me, lots of them out there. And so we're just looking at building up those schools that want to be the leaders and showcase what we can do for the industry, and pile those onto that. So we're quite busy. We've got lots of interest. There's lots of different ways this can go. But ultimately, we're here for the school districts and for you guys to figure out what's the best solution. How do we take the friction out of all of this and ultimately get results that you can see from those students engaging with that content?
You're kind of in a rare kind of setting situation, because when we look at folks outside of the education industry, and your origin story, clearly, I mean, you went to school and got degrees and things like that, but you were in an industry where you weren't dealing with K-12 world, you weren't dealing with Title I, you weren't dealing with all school boards and superintendents and those kinds of things. And so in many ways you've come full circle, because education, I believe, is one of those platforms where, yes, we're teaching curriculum, yes, we're assessing students, but we're also building a pathway to a world of possibility, the world that you were in your origin story. So I guess my question, Ryan, is someone where, innovation, I've done innovation in Silicon Valley, I've done different things. What are some things that in the educational world that you see that maybe we can do better in terms of
Yeah.
providing and building that environment or that culture so that
Yeah.
we're preparing students and teachers and administrators for this kind of platform to build the next Silicon Valley, whatever that
Right.
may be.
Sean, what a great question, because, I'm coming at this with new, fresh eyes, right? I didn't come from the education industry. I've worked with lots of industries, both, corporate focused, but also government focused. And when I ran up against the education market, I thought, holy smoly, right? Think about what you have to do on a daily basis. It's not just one thing. So if I've got customers, I focus on the customers, but it's not customers. You've got students, but then you've got teachers, and then you've got parents, then you've got a board. And so it becomes incredibly difficult in trying to figure out where the priorities sit and where do you focus your energy. And so one of the things I see is that struggle is that there's so many things being thrown at you daily. And how do you cut the noise out and try to focus in on things that are going to get you the results and get in front of those issues instead of reacting to them, right? And so that's what I kind of see as I get into these school districts, is that a lot of these guys, men and women, are really wanting to do the right thing. They are devoted to it. I've not been in an industry where, literally, people really love what they do and they do the best they can. But the challenges that you've got are really complicated. So when you look at, where does digital equity fall on the line of top priorities? Well, it's not number one, right? Somewhere probably in the top 10. And so, what we're looking at is, how do we take that off the list and then make this a winner for you? And so you get in front of the ability to showcase how you've made that decision, how this technology is playing out in ways that are adding real benefit to that ecosystem. So, hats off to you guys, because you've got to deal with, look, you've got teachers that need to feel comfortable with your decisions, right? And buy into them. You've got the administration that you have to deal with to make sure everybody's in alignment. And then you've got, the education department above you and your boards that you have to deal with. And so I don't think I've run into an environment as complicated as the education market. And that's my view of it, but wow.
Heavy. That is so heavy, man. I we talked a little bit about your love for podcasts and things. So what are those things on your bookshelf or on your Spotify podcast playlist, or maybe you got a go-to album or something you tune into, man? What are those things that inspire you and fuel you as a leader, as an innovator?
Well, my personality is, I just love learning, right? Learning about new things, learning about what's going on around me. And I just constantly feed my brain with podcasts. I love podcasts. And so it can be anything from The Economist and learning about the economy, how things are working, down to the education industry and understanding one of those key issues that are driving it. And as you know, Sean, in your podcast, it's a complicated environment, and you get, people coming at this at different angles, different views. And so I just love that information, and I soak it up and try to understand, how does that play out in the world, and whether I have, an impact on it, or at least try to understand a little bit of what's going on. So I'm a big STEM fan. I listen to Science Friday, lots of STEM programming on that front. I also love like I said, industry podcasts such as yours and others that really help me understand the struggles that are going on. And so I'm all over the place, but I constantly listen to podcasts. Love them.
That's great, Ryan. That is great. So if folks want to connect with you and find out more about the absolute noble and important work that you're doing to bridge that digital divide, how can folks connect with you and Olivia Technologies and learn more about the platform?
Yeah, and I would love for you to connect with me. Anybody out there that's interested in struggling with this issue, more than happy to hear from them. They can reach me several different ways. They can find me on LinkedIn, Ryan Ross at Olivia. We also have Olivia Technologies as a LinkedIn page. But if they personally want to reach out to me, I am perfectly fine with that as well. They can send me an email at ryan@olivia.education. And they can also reach us through our website, which is olivia.school. And so those are the vehicles that they can reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. Good, bad, or indifferent. I literally want to hear people's thoughts around this. And then one last thing, Sean, I think is interesting is that we realize what we're doing is more about community, right? And how communities come together. Because we realize when we get into these rural areas that they are very community focused, right? And so one of the things that we launched about a month ago is the Digital Access Challenge. And the Digital Access Challenge is really designed to bring the community in, where you have, the school administrators, absolutely they want to solve this problem of digital equity, right? So that's one group that can join easily. The other is philanthropic groups. As you well know, in Title I schools and around those areas, philanthropic groups are already investing in trying to solve these problems. And so we want to work with those philanthropic groups to help literally deliver what their missions are in making sure that there's digital equity and parity for students. And then also looking at how corporations play a role in this. And because corporations, if you look at banks and supermarkets, for example, they're investing in those communities. And so here's another way for them to do that. And the reason why we want them to look at this as an investment is, as we talked earlier, one of the biggest challenge is the digital resources that a school can afford, right? And if you're in a small school district, and I'd love to hear from you, Sean, and what you think about this, but if you're in a small school district with a very small budget, you can't afford those digital assets that you think will have the biggest impact and really meaningful for those students. And so how do you fill the gap? And so our vision is to see how we get these communities pulled together to help in essentially subsidizing the fundamentals of the programming, so that any school, whether you're a Title I school or a city school, has access to the best resources possible, and that we can deliver that through the Olivia network. And so I'd love to hear from you in terms of what struggles you might have in your own school related to digital resource.
It is, and I'm going on year 16 as a Title I principal, and I think the biggest way to overcome that struggle, and it's the pathway that you just shared, is bringing in your partners, bringing in your community. And I find that if you're able to partner with that bank, with whoever is the main source of income or revenue, and maybe it is the Rotary Club or some philanthropic group, that has always been kind of good traction for me. And I would say this to any principal or assistant principal or superintendent in a Title I district or rural or wherever it may be, is to look at your neighborhood, and there are folks in your neighborhood that can help. But it sounds like too that with what you're doing with Olivia, that you can kind of help that school or that principal navigate, or you're kind of bringing your help to bring some of that synergy together, because technology is expensive. And principals have to make hard decisions, and in wake of COVID, where we relied heavily upon digital tools, and now with AI, and now with personalized learning, it's not going anywhere. So you really, I'm really inspired, I guess, and filled with hope by what you all are doing. But it is a challenge. And
we see that, Sean. I mean, in a perfect world, right, you could create an incredibly engaging environment for these students, and it can be done, and the technology is there to do it, right? And so, like I said early on in the podcast, don't let the fact that there's no broadband out there to go and deliver your vision, right? And then on top of it, who made you as an administrator having to go out and raise funds for something that you should already have funds for. That's the other thing when I look at this industry, like, wow, right? And
Yes.
so, it's the fundamentals here. And so, again, I turn this into almost a mission-driven focus, right?
Hmm.
I see the opportunities. I see the ability to bring these communities together because they're there. They just don't have a vehicle to go and invest in to make them happen. And I think that's where we stand in, is that we've got this vehicle. We want, all those communities that are already investing in education to see how we can implement this. Because when I look at the school industry, technology is how you create efficiencies, right? How do you make it easier for teachers, students, administrators to implement in a world that is going digital? And so investing in that infrastructure is only going to get you in a position to have better outcomes, as we all believe. I mean, why deploy digital resources if you don't believe that they have better outcomes, right? And so, again, this is where I see we can bring the communities together and get the teachers out of trying to find resources, try to get the administrations, we can help drive that vehicle on a platform that can be delivered anywhere. And so it's not about us, it's about the community, what you guys do, and how we can create that environment. Because as we've gone across the country, we realize that each community is a little different. Hawaii is different than Texas, and Texas is different than Georgia. And so being able to tap into those resources and making it their network and their platform and their community, that's what we're focused in on.
Wow. And all done in service and support of students who don't normally have that access. You're building a world of possibility. You're building realms and images of possibilities for kids in schools that don't normally get that. You're doing uplifting work, man. Really are.
Believe me, it's not easy, but we see the opportunities. I've never been in an industry where there was so many possibilities in using technology to really make a change.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to make sure we're aligned with what the standards are, what the missions are for these schools, and make sure that the technology works. And it's got to be simple, both for the teachers, both for the students. And we forgot about the IT group.
Oh yeah. That group too. That's a very pivotal group as well. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you've got some interesting stories there too.
Well, absolutely. But, again, we realized very quickly that a lot of the IT managers, again, they're just trying to keep the Wi-Fi up and running,
Right.
laptops and kids, they're already jammed with stuff. So we don't want to give something that is now more overhead to what they do. And again, we're a managed service. So we literally configure the devices, implement them, do the training. We want to be a service, not a technology that the IT group's looking at this sideways. So that is another factor of making sure that we are successful in the implementations and what we do, and to make it as simple as possible for everybody to agree to and participate in as part of being able to deploy what we do.
I know, Ryan, that several of the listeners of the podcast are very diligent consumers of ed tech and are connected educators in some way and frequent conferences, whether it's ISTE or
Yep.
FETC, and so is Olivia in that realm or in that circuit in some way, and people will be able to connect with you at
Yeah,
those events?
absolutely. We are just getting into, we were focused on delivering the technology, and I've then started going to events and trying to get people aware of what we do. So I'm going to an event in Texas here in September through the Texas Tribune that they use for education. And I'm looking at other organizations where, whether it's technological or content focused, right? Where we can go in and present what we're up to. I just came from a trade show about 3 months ago in the UK called BET. I don't know if you've ever been to that. But
Not yet. That's been one. That's on my bucket list. But is it everything that I read about and see about?
Sean, this was mind blowing. I've been to thousands of trade shows. I've never been to one as big as this, right? And so, what was really fascinating as part of that conference was just walking the floor and looking at all the content providers, right?
Mhm.
And it is amazing, But what was fascinating to me is if you look at Pearson, you look at McGraw, they're all moving digital,
Yeah, man.
right? You'll be hard pressed to find a textbook 5 years from now, And so AI is playing a big role in this. And so I realized walking that floor that whether it's us or somebody else, you got to fill the gap in figuring out how these resources are deployed both inside the school and after school, right?
Mm.
And I can see how this industry is just pushing harder and harder and harder towards the adoption of digital resources for lots of good reasons. But all you have to do is walk the floor and realize very quickly that this is where everything's going, right? Digitally.
As I think about the absolute speed of technology right
Yeah,
now, just in
yeah,
terms of like AI right now. Now, again, AI is not new. But
that's right.
it has become very mainstream, and it has become, 3 months ago we really weren't talking about AI, maybe 6 months ago, right?
Yeah, right,
Now
right,
it's everywhere. So
right,
I really value and appreciate how what you're doing with Olivia, where you're taking you're really not, I mean, you're attentive to the speed and acceleration of change,
yeah,
and yet you're doing your absolute hardest and noblest work to close that divide for students. I mean, there got to be some days though where and again, I'm putting myself in I am in that seat, where I want
right,
to make
exactly.
sure that our kids get that cool stuff,
Yeah,
and to make sure that our kids do not fall any more behind
right,
than they may have, because of the community they live in, because of the socioeconomic status that is turned against them.
right.
I mean,
Well, you bring
that's
up,
amazing.
Sean, you bring up a really good point. I mean, look, if I don't have access to the internet, AI doesn't do me any good anyways,
Mhm.
right? So you got 15 million students that are already missing out on this. So the question then is, how do you, and AI is not going away. It's like, the iPhone was introduced and you say, I don't want my son to have one or daughter to have one. And guess what? They're going to have one anyway. So it is coming. And so, as you know, the industry struggling about, the benefits and the pitfalls of AI. And so, my view of this as I'm looking in the future is that I think AI is a fantastic tool for helping students understand structurally how to present things, how to consume things, and all those things. And so, not to write their paper so that I can get an A on it, right? It's really trying to understand how you take that structure and use it logically to have you have better outcomes in what you're presenting in your research or your papers, et cetera. But having said that, how do you create a safe environment for AI, right? How do you make sure that you've got ways for that technology to be utilized the way it can to benefit students, but yet help you protect against the other side of the equation? And so I have some thoughts around how that could be deployed both inside the classroom
Hmm.
and ultimately, on the devices. But it's not so much about, AI on our device, because we're already getting data. We can also start figuring out what's the best content, what's being consumed, all these things in the background to better position that in-home experience. It's really about how AI is going to play out in the classroom, right? And then building, an environment where, again, making sure that the rules and regulations, the standards, all those things are being applied inside that classroom. And again, we believe there's a role for us to help bring that as part of an experience that the teachers want to use and the students can engage with in a safe way, right? And that's what this is all about. The AI is not going away. Just learn, it's a new tool, incredibly exciting. I'm sure you've delved into it, but
Yeah, to play with
it can go in a lot of different directions.
Yeah, that And on that note, Ryan, I'm sure right now as we speak, something is happening in the AI world that is going to have impact on
Yeah.
on your industry and mine.
Yeah,
In
absolutely.
the next 6 months, and then it'll be something else. So, I am so grateful for your energy and your heroics to really make the world a better place for our kids. You really are. You're doing great and noble and important work with Olivia Technologies. Friends, as I always sign off on the podcast here, don't forget to share with the world your dreams, your ideas, and your visions, and most importantly, in the case of our friend and bandmate Ryan Ross, as don't forget to share those when you see that there is a need to make a positive change for someone who might not normally have that opportunity. It's important. Ignore those naysayers and know that your work is changing the world, just like Ryan Ross, CEO of Olivia Technologies, is doing. This is the Principal Liner Notes. I'm grateful for you, Ryan, for being on the podcast. You got an open invitation to come back again, and we'll talk about the next big thing in technology, whatever, or in innovation, whatever it may be, my friend.
Thank you so much, Sean. I love being part of the band. Let's go make some music.
You got it. You got
All
it.
right.
So we're signing off. And again, thank you so much. Hope to catch you all on the flip side. I will have all of Ryan Ross's contact information and links to Olivia Technologies. Thanks again. Catch you on the flip side.
Thank you.